the building. For those tuned in on online, if you go to the panel and meetings tab and check advisory panel documents, you'll see the agenda as well as the presentation for today's meeting. Let's go ahead with the introductions. Chip
Boyles with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District and the MPO.
Morgan Butler with Southern Environmental Law Center. Mark Graham, Albemarle County.
Kristen Sekas, City of Charlottesville.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Board Supervisor.
All righty, technical team.
Joel Denazio, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
Dave Covington, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
Debbie Messina, Philip Chiquette. Linda Collins, VDOT IT Support.
Hal Jones, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
John Lynch, VDOT Culpeper District.
Lou Hatter, VDOT Communications.
All right, thank you. Obviously, those of you that attended, we didn't have a meeting 2 weeks ago. We went on a field review at Birthmark. So our stats go back to the September 8th meeting, which are back to about normal. I'm not sure what inspired more people to tune in on August the 25th, but these are about where we've been running normally. So folks, still tuned in, and every now and then I run across somebody who says, hey, and it'll be kind of random. I watched the last panel meeting online and always want to ask, well, okay, why? But it's interesting, the people that do. There are folks out there in your community that are interested in what you're talking about. We had 9 emails and phone calls with a few different topics come in last time. A comment regarding some ponding water on Route 29 widening project. I think Lou bounced that over to the project team. Comments still regarding signal timing, which aren't unexpected, and we'll have a little signal timing update later in the agenda. One comment regarding the staging of work at Birthmark. There was a period where there was a lot of activity, and then a day or so where there wasn't much activity, and that's because they had to demobilize and move that crane. And that explanation went back to that individual. A business person, and I'll just add a personal comment, a business person who was very much opposed to the RIO GSI did send a note of good job, VDOT and Lane Corman. So that was appreciated. I particularly appreciated Lou sharing that with me. One inquired about improving the 29 I-64 interchange, which we're not going to tackle here in this group. We'll let Lou and Dave and Joel and John Lynch figure that out later. One inquired about traffic signal impact related to the future Woodbrook Elementary School expansion. And Lou, I can't recall exactly what we did with that comment.
The county has requested a traffic impact study, and that study will be, VDOT will look at that traffic impact study after it's done.
Okay.
We can't really make any comment about
Okay.
what the impact might be until we see the study.
All right.
Which
All
is
right.
what was conveyed to that individual.
Okay. Thank you. And then the last 2 comments had to do with pavement and pavement quality of the GSI, and since those comments were in, we finished the final paving out there. And Dave can run over that. Pavement markings, I think, still have. Are those all finished, or
No, not yet.
still? Okay. Well, we'll get to
Finished
that.
about half of them.
Okay. Okay. We did have one posting on the provide input piece out on the website. Had a little slight edge to it, to the extent that we took it down, but I did want to address one of the questions that was mentioned in this post, and it had to do with you need to put up low clearance signs at RIO GSI because trucks are almost scraping the underneath of the bridge, and I can just say that's not happening. And this person was not too pleased in any way, but take the comment. Clearance is 16.6, which meets all design requirements. It's what it's supposed to be. there's no load clearance sign warranted, and we're not going to hang one up. So. Project hotline, no calls, so I'm sure Chris Reed was appreciative of that. We said we would do a continuing update on accidents as that statistics came in. We got some fresh information, and that's on the agenda as item 9. So we'll get that at a little bit later. The open discussion period, Brad?
Yeah.
Kristen?
One thing to make sure we keep on our back burner is the color of the staining on the pedestrian islands.
Uh-huh.
I know we said we'd revisit it when all that work's done, and I'm not bringing it up for discussion today, but just want to make sure we don't lose
Right.
sight of that.
Well, that as well as the marking around the curbs, and Dave will talk to that a little bit on item 6. Absolutely. Okay. All right.
Actually, I just have one thing. It's not really a question, but just since our last meeting was not for the 9 or 20 or how many people watch it online, wasn't online.
Right.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate being able to go and look at the Berkmar construction site and kind of walk parts of it and see how the bridge looks and watch the people as they were building the bridge. I think, we look at pictures and we all kind of
Yeah.
imagine what it looks like from schematics and things, but being there and seeing just the scale of it and also the non-scale of it. It's a huge project, but it doesn't feel gigantic when you're
Right.
and
Good.
I really
Yeah, that's a
appreciate
good
that.
observation. That's a good observation. As I'm thinking about it, there's probably no reason we couldn't have a little live portion of a field review. Guess it's a little late to think about that.
You could do one.
For those watching, that would have been a good idea, but
Next time.
I'll keep that in mind, because there's several different applications now where you can push video out
Facebook
live.
Live.
Think about that next time. But thank you. It was, for those watching, we did have a good trip out. I think there were 6 panel folks and a guest from the county that came with Mark, and there were 4 Explorer loads of us that went out and looked at a good bit of the Berkmar, not just the bridge, but the alignment. That was 2 Thursdays ago, September the 22nd. And if I remember correctly, the day after we were there, they put those last girders in and finished the placement of all the girders. So it was a good trip. On our percents complete, wall staining has started as it was scheduled to. So that's getting underway. All the temporary crossover removals now are 100% complete. No change on the final, the final paving is 100% complete. Punch list up to 80%, so things are progressing as they should to get to that December 2nd completion date. On Route 29 widening, made some progress on Phase 7 grading, up a little bit to 15%. The Phase 2 grading moved up from 70 to 80%. 3 and 5 from 40 to 50%. So everything progressing there as it should as well. Down on Berkmar, of course, the big thing is steel girder erection up to 100% complete, which is good. Progress still on construction both north and south of the river. Down on Hillsdale, utility relocations up to 90%. The partial building demolition got finished, and then work continuing. Well, work needs to get started on bridge substructures, but also in October, work is scheduled to start on a retaining wall as well as the roundabout. On October the 20th, at our next meeting, Jeanette from the city is going to come and give us a Hillsdale update, and I thought that'd be a good idea I don't know why I hadn't thought of that before, but a good idea to have Jeanette come and take a little time and give us a personal view from the city. Any questions on percent complete? All right. Thank you. Dave?
Okay, just a quick update on what work is going on this week and over the next couple of weeks. Starting with the Rio grade separated intersection, Phil mentioned we're 80% complete on the punch list items. These are all the small little things that they need to make sure they finish up. They're continuing to work on that this week. There's various items as well as into the future. Pavement markings, specifically the route shields on the pavement and the raised markers that go along the little reflective devices so people can find their lanes in the rain. Those were supposed to be installed last week. We had rain every day last week. They have to be installed in the dry. So they started that at night this week. I believe they have 6 of them done so far of the route shields, so they'll finish the rest of those up probably tonight. On the asphalt, where you have the 29 shield for the through lanes
symbol.
and
Okay.
631 for Rio Road. So those are going down this week, and they'll be finished up by the end of this week. In addition to that, the same people that are applying those are the ones that put the paint markings down, so they're going to go out and wrap around the nose of those islands, so they'll be more visible. So we'll have not only the sign in the middle of the island says, you know, go around the island, but also that pavement marking there that'll be more visible. So we ensure we don't have an issue with the dark color of the asphalt pavement and then the curb as well, because those are a darker gray raised curb. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, does that mean you're thinking we probably won't try to restain the islands then?
No, because the staining is interesting. There's a couple different ways that's done. The way that it was done in this case was the admixture was added as they were applying the concrete, so it's actually built in, so they're not going to come back and try to restain them. To try to make that lighter would probably be almost impossible, but it'll naturally fade over time and become lighter, but the asphalt will as well. So you kind of have that same situation there. And then painting anything on that curb within probably 4 or 5 months is probably not going to look very good. So what we wanted to try to do first is handle it with the pavement markings, wrapping them around there to give it that visibility, that contrast, instead of actually doing something to the island itself. Because I think we've got a good looking island now. I'd hate to take away from the aesthetics of that.
We do need to see how that pavement marking
Yeah, right.
is going to work, because those islands, they do sort of all roll into one at a quick glance. And Morgan's even going to have more of a question after he sees your next picture.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Crosswalk stamping. This began this week. They did one mock-up, I believe it was Monday night, one of the entrances, across the entrance, to make sure that we agreed that it looks the way it should. And then they started the rest of them this week, so they'll be working on that for the next probably week and a half to 2 weeks, unless we get rain. That's another application they can't do when we do get rain. Wall staining, we had 10% complete on the schedule. The reality is it's much greater than that, but it's just not visible. So I didn't want to put a big number on there and have somebody drive by and say, wait a minute, that wasn't right. Because in that contract with their subcontractor, they have to come through and they do a lot of hand sanding, making all the ridges blend in, filling any little holes, and then they have to power wash the whole thing. But they have completed most of that. They've actually started applying the stain to the walls now. So in reality, we're probably more like 40% of the work is complete, but maybe 10% of the actual stain.
Okay.
So we'll see an acceleration of that over the next couple of weeks. And then just installing the electrical service and pulling the cable at the Rio Berkmar signal. They've got the foundations constructed now. They'll get the cables in and they'll put the poles in over the next 2 weeks. Next slide.
Dave, I think once you go through this, talk a bit about the difference between stamped asphalt and stamped concrete. Because isn't that what we have?
Well, there's not a whole lot of difference. There's You can do stamped asphalt just like you do stamped concrete, where you have like a form liner that you press into wet concrete, and then you pull it out. A lot of sidewalks, even residential, are done that way. Patios, things like that. We looked at that application here for the stamped asphalt, and after reaching out to a bunch of different groups, and we're talking municipalities throughout the state who have had a lot of this work done, we determined that it was faster, cheaper, and better quality to use a system where they come in, there's a machine that heats up the asphalt, they apply a sort of a plastic material that has a grit built into it, and then they come through and they actually stamp that into the asphalt. And that's what we have here, and it's ended up being a very durable system.
Right.
And better than just the asphalt stamping.
But isn't there more contrast here than there is with the stamped concrete on the pedestrian?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Now this looks good. This turned out very, very good. In fact, if you happen to be out this way, where we're at, this is the entrance there to the Hardee's. So the one just to the south, this is a vacated building now. Actually, if you go up there and walk and look at it, it has good depth on it, very good definition. It turned out really well. What you're seeing here is when they do it, they have this, it's not really a powder, but almost like beads that prevent things from sticking to it. So they put that on there so that their machine stamps it and doesn't stick, and try to pull it back up. And all this stuff will get washed away with the rain. It's normally how it's done. You can see here where I just took my boot and tried to clean off one section to get a little bit better picture, but they did turn out very well.
We actually know Dave was trying to do like a little kid, put his boot. Probably wrote his initials down there.
I got caught. So
Now,
those.
go ahead. You go ahead and finish.
I was going to say that's what we're going to have across all these entrances within that limit that we talked about before when we decided what are we going to do here and what's it going to look like, and then also across the roadway at the bridge. So where those crosswalks are at the bridge and across Ryder Road will look just like this.
I just wanted to make a comment because when we talked back about this early on about the use of the actual brick versus stamping, I can tell you from personal experience, while the bricks look terrific
For a year.
the day or two after they go down, the eventual, just like potholes, blowout of those bricks creates a real maintenance issue. And a lot of localities, being good soldiers, when bricks start popping, they go out and replace them at first. And then that tends to trail off, and you're either left with a hole or a hole that's patched with asphalt. And it goes, the danger is that it goes from what's very nice looking to something that's just, that misses the mark in terms of the aesthetic view that you were looking for. This should be durable and last without creating those kind of issues. I was really pleased when I saw those examples that you sent. This is a good job.
Yeah, this is becoming very widely used, especially with municipalities that are looking for a quick solution that doesn't cost a great deal of money but has a really good quality to it.
So I assume it does have a lifespan, so in 5, 8, 10 years.
No, I think this is more like 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back and look at the
In 25 to 30 years,
points.
what do you do?
You can simply,
Stamp it
pave
over
over it, you can stamp it again.
Okay.
I mean, they can come in and do the same application right over top of that.
Okay.
Or whatever technology
Right.
they're using 2025.
But it just becomes part of the road and you just do whatever you're going to do.
Is it a different color asphalt? Why is it so?
It's not, what you're seeing, the color is not the asphalt, it's actually the
Paint.
plastic material that they apply on top of the asphalt and stamp down into it.
So is it possible then to do that on the islands as well?
No, not into the concrete, because the concrete's already hardened. Whereas asphalt, you can actually heat it up and become more.
That's what I wanted you to explain.
Yeah. I mean, when you have hardened concrete,
This softens it, I guess.
there's no way to actually stamp anything into it once it's already been done. In the same regard, if you have soft concrete that hasn't cured yet, you can't really stamp it.
Right.
Because you can lay the forms in it, you press them down by hand. This is actually a machine that applies a whole lot of force to actually drive it down, drive the pattern, the forms down into the asphalt.
And it won't ever peel.
And we contacted some municipalities that have had these in place for anywhere from 1 to 7 years, and they highly recommended that we go this route.
Yeah.
They were very impressed with.
Is there some warranty either from the contractor or the supplier with this?
There is a warranty. I don't recall what it is exactly right off my head. It's a lot longer than I thought it would be.
I'm not aware, well, I should say it differently. The places I've been associated with that have used this have not had any issues with them. So hopefully that will be our experience here.
I think it will be. And the other thing that factors in here, not necessarily on the entrances, although you have turning vehicles here, so anytime you have wheels turning, it's like in parking lots at the ends, you have problems because of the friction that those turning wheels cause. But the amount of traffic on 29, so for those crosswalks and on Rio Road, you see some areas that I think maybe Bridgewater College, right there in front of the college, has some inlaid brick, and it looks really nice, but they have a small fraction of the traffic in the speed as well. It's 15, I believe it's 15 or 20 miles per hour through there. So there was a lot of concern about what was going to happen with the tractor trailers and all that traffic that's going through there every day and every night. So I think this is a good solution here.
And I think another advantage to this, I've actually replaced bricks with this, is when you're plowing snow.
Yeah.
This is much better application.
Yeah, it's very consistent. There's no edges sticking up. It almost appears perfect. So I encourage you to go look at it in the field. I was impressed.
And just to remind yourselves, you're the reason we did this across all of these interests. I mean, that was a recommendation that came from this panel early on, and the work that Morgan and SELC was kind enough to do to help draw up some diagrams.
We don't have the trees, but,
I'm going to throw one more Hail Mary out there on the island issue. Could you, like I said, Hail Mary, could you potentially put a layer of asphalt on top and stamp?
You wouldn't want to do that. The answer is yes, and it wouldn't be there long.
But you could do a layer of concrete.
I think let's get through the pavement markings. I'm not completely ready to take that off something off the table. It's just that I don't know what might be yet. Let's
Just to put it in context, one idea was that all that would match, and then it becomes a visual cue to pedestrians of where that's where I'm supposed to go. The advantage is, I think, to having it all look uniform. I think this looks pretty nice.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It's a shame, really, that the islands didn't turn out on that same.
Well, now the islands, the portion of the islands that we're talking about are not the crosswalk, but the parts outside of the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't match this, because what we have on the bridge actually will match the crosswalk. And we can do, for instance, what we call kind of the pork chops there on the southeast quadrant. I'd have to go back and check with them, but I think the thought is that they're going to continue this through that pork chop and make it all meet up in the middle. So we have that consistency.
Use a little outside baseball language for the
you can picture the island where there's actually 3 different directions coming in, where the crosswalk, we actually walk through, and you're walking on asphalt. You're not walking on the concrete. The concrete is the raised portion around you that has that cobblestone pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can
So the crosswalk will be
right.
this, right?
Right.
The crosswalk will be that. It's that refuge island.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the reference.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when it's all done, I think I'll be able to.
Let's just keep it
We could keep it on the table.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere.
We still have a
Morgan's
year
not going anywhere. It's
of
not going
time.
What'd you say?
So we still have a year of their time. Dave, how
Morgan's gonna be out there with a can of
constructive is
paint.
this as far as how long does it take? How long does it close off an entrance to?
Oh, it's
get done?
very, very quick. I mean, this is done overnight. I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say within 4 to 6 hours, this whole thing is done. And they can do numerous ones at a time. They have the machine out, they hop from one to the next, kind of an assembly line process. So something where laying brick in, it's pretty extensive time-wise to get it right. This can be done very, very quickly. I would imagine that now that they're used to the area, by the end, they'll probably be doing it in 2 hours, or maybe, I don't know. But very quick, easy solution that's pretty effective.
And it will be on the crosswalks and every entrance on the local lanes.
Yes, between, I believe, the ends of the barrier walls, that
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
every entrance
As well as the crosswalks.
on Ride.
As well as cross.
Any other questions? All right. So not a whole lot of pictures arrive. That's been the big change since we've seen it last. So I just wanted to make sure y'all had an opportunity to see that. Lane closures, we're still back at the nighttime lane closures, and that's primarily for the wall staining. And then they'll also do some lane closures when they do these crosswalks across the road. So 9 to 6 there.
How much longer do you think the wall staining will go on?
Probably about 3 weeks.
Oh, we said we were not going to do staining until the end of everything, right?
Well, they've begun the staining.
Yeah, they started, yeah.
Okay. But
So they've done all the sanding and they're patching all the holes, power washing, and now they're staining.
So they're going over to Best Buy and doing that one too?
They will be, yes.
So they're finishing this one and then going there?
Yes. Now, temperature-wise, depending on what time they finish, they may have to wait till the spring, but it's the same group that's doing those things. Okay. So over the next 2 weeks, we're continuing the punch list items, continuing the crosswalk stamping, the wall staining. I just put this to pull in the conductor and the cable at Ridgewood Berkmar signal in case that happens to go into next week. And erecting the signal poles, the upright poles at Ridgewood Berkmar. So they got those foundations and they poured the last one today, and now they're bringing the poles and start putting those poles up. And lane closures are the same over the next 2 weeks. No difference in the foreseeable future for that. Okay. Moving on to 29 widening, a little bit more activity on this project this week. So slope finishing and seeding, they've got their seeding crews on a weekly schedule. They come in one day every week and seed everything that's available. So now you're starting to see the slopes turn green. Hopefully the good weather continues for a little bit and we can continue to grow grass. Grading the subgrade and installing the base stone on the southbound lanes, the old southbound lanes that they're working in now on the west side of the road. Preparatory grading at Ridgewood Drive. This is for the next phase. So when they move the traffic over to the median, the northbound traffic to where the southbound traffic is now, they want to have all those entrances ready to be able to turn traffic over to them as quickly as possible. And we've got grade changes over there, so they're doing some preliminary grading to be able to move those entrances to a new entrance location and not disrupt the traffic flow, not only to the residential areas, but also at Hollymead and Ashwood, because all that work has to be done at night, has to be done very quickly, and they can't obstruct anybody's entrance. So they're starting on that ahead of time, and it's good. Asphalt demolition at Town Center, and we'll kind of get a look at that in just a moment. Wedging and build up at Town Center, that's just getting that finished grade right for the asphalt. It's not a lot of work, it's just a little bit time consuming. Finalizing these 2 jacking boards that we've been talking about for a while, structures 8-1 and 12-20. Those are the problematic ones going through rock. 8-1 is wrapping up this week. 12-20, they've punched through to the open section. It's all prepped and ready, so now they're laying pipe in there, so they're wrapping that up this week. Culvert installations throughout the project. There's a whole bunch of pipes to put in, and they're just working at different locations when they have it available. They're also installing now the drop inlet tops, So this is kind of the last stage for the drainage before they're able to come in and do the paving to be able to move the southbound lanes back over toward the west. Moving to Jack and Moore's, there's 2 more to do here, 11-1 and 14-3. These are a little bit north of Ashwood Boulevard in that location. Under drain installations continues. They've got some more curbing before they switch that traffic over. They've got a lot of medium curb to put in, and signal pole foundations at Ashwood and Hollymead. So you're going to go ahead and get some of those signal poles up. We're working on detector cameras right now. Instead of most signals, you have a loop cut in the asphalt that has an electrical induction to determine if there's a vehicle on top of it. So if you're sitting at a stoplight, it detects there's a vehicle there and you get a green phase. It's been challenging with the detection cameras due to the distances and wind and all that stuff. So when they put those poles up, they can go ahead and put those cameras up there, and that's a much more reliable location for them. Shorter distances, more direct to where the traffic is, so it'll be a reliable system then. So any questions on anything from this week? I know there's a lot of work going on this week on right widening. Okay. So this is north of Asheville Boulevard. This is actually 1220 right here. They've got a steel plate on top of that trench so they could get equipment across. But so they punched through now, and now they're basically just laying that pipe in that trench. So much easier operation. The hard work's done. They've pulled the machine out of there, and now they can finish that up. Next slide. And this is looking north on the old southbound lanes up toward Town Center. And this is that area in here where we have the asphalt that they still need to demolish and do that wedging in there, so we can push the traffic back over to this side and have them running over here. When we have the northbound traffic here, of course the diversion will go the other way to get people back into the existing northbound lanes. So that's what's coming in the next phase. We're still looking at next month for that. Lane closures, they're really not doing very many lane closures at night on 29 widening, but as necessary, they may periodically close a lane to bring in a piece of equipment or some pipe or something like that. But really not a lot of night work going on out there, and not a lot of lane closures at night. So over the next 2 weeks, finalizing Pond 5, so they're getting all their ponds put in, getting them seeded, getting the water going to them. That's a good sign. That means we're kind of getting into that phase where everything is stabilized. Completing structures 1220 and 81, if there's anything left to do on that next week. I mentioned earlier, moving on to a couple new Jack and Moore structures. Installing curb backup material, that's just backfill behind the curb. So when they put in a new curb, they have to put stone and then topsoil on top of that. Subgrade preparations and undercuts continue. Undercuts is when you have a area where you have some bad soil underneath, you have to cut down a little further than you thought. You don't necessarily know that until you expose it. So they have found a couple of those areas, and they've done a good job of identifying them and actually doing a good job with the undercuts. Again, placing and grading more base stone, culvert installations, curb and gutter and median strip concrete. They have several thousand feet of that left to do. That goes very quickly when they have it all opened up for the subcontractor to come in and pour those curbs, and installing the electrical service at Ashwood and Hollymead so they have electricity for those cameras and eventually the permanent signals. Any questions on 29 widening? Okay. Lane closures are the same for the next 2 weeks as needed. We haven't seen a lane closure out there for a while though. So moving on to Berkmar Extended, real quickly, this topic here, erosion control maintenance. This is a very critical item for a project that's as large and as long as Berkmar is. We have 2.2 miles of exposed ground out there. And we did have a situation on July 30th and 31st where we had back-to-back storms on each day. And both of them exceeded the design year storm of the erosion control items. So our standards, in conjunction with all the environmental permitting agencies, says that you design erosion control measures for a 2-year storm. That's a storm that has the potential to occur every 2 years. And that's kind of how we talk about measuring storms. So on the 30th and 31st, we had storms that exceeded that, and we did have some sediment loss into some streams, which is not necessarily unexpected. It does happen, and when it does happen, the issue is, okay, what do you do about it at that point? So we met with lane foremen. We had our regional MS4 coordinator come out and do another inspection on August 2nd. And we all agreed, and the recommendation of the lane foreman was review your permit and determine whether or not you need to self-report this to the permitting agencies. And they did. And so the Department of Environmental Quality, who issued their Virginia Water Protection permit, came out on August 22nd and saw some issues and gave them a notice of things that they had to correct. So we've been working on all those items. DEQ is back out today. I was out until a little bit around lunchtime with them, and the inspection today is going very well. So they're kind of getting to where they need to be. They've done some cleanup in the streams. To me, the most important thing is they've discussed with DEQ the need for DEQ to work with them to tell them, okay, tell us when you're happy, tell us what you're not happy with. We'll go fix it. So their attitude is great about it. I just thought it was important that everybody's aware of that situation. So, but it looks like everything is shaping up very well. If I hear any different, we'll let you know. So again, that's why we have erosion control maintenance on there pretty much every other week, every meeting. It is a critical aspect of that project. So box out grading, they're continuing to work on this. This is basically just forming that typical section, if you will, of a roadway, kind of like almost getting to the fine grading point. They're constructing their spillways. If you remember when we were out there and we looked at some of these ponds, for everybody who went on the site visit with us, Pond 8 was the one all the way up near Town Center behind the Coles. And then as you go further south, they decrease in number. So Pond 8, 7, 6 are the three on the most northern part. So they have their primary spillways, which is the riser structures in place, and they're all protected now. And then they have to construct the secondary spillways in case they become inundated. Basically, that's just a riprap channel coming out of the basin. Constructing the access road for Abutment A, they haven't begun that yet. I believe that will actually occur next week. They have to be able to get down underneath there to do some work on that slope and to bring drainage all the way down to the river in the future. Fine grading and placing stone north of the river. Because of the issues that they've had with the erosion control, they've focused a lot of their attention over the past 2 or 3 weeks on erosion control, so they haven't gotten to fine grading and placing the stone yet, which I'm okay with. They're well ahead of schedule. If they want to focus on erosion control, I'll fully support that. Continuing the overhang installation, we have a picture in a few minutes that you'll see where they've pretty much completed the overhang installation. You'll be able to see what those are. I know I say that and most people can't visualize that. We'll actually take a look at what that is. Fabricating the edge forms, this is what allows them to pour concrete up in the air and not have it just fall over. Abutment A backwall pour will occur tomorrow. Abutment E, MSE panel installation. Abutment B, this is occurring every day, so they're backfilling the abutment that we looked at. Last time we were out there, it was about 8 feet low, so we're bringing that up to grade and bringing the MSE panels up with it. Pond 5 outfall, completing structures on Pond 7 and 8. All that has been completed this week. The cedars were out today, and trenching and light pole foundations at Hilton Heights and in Town Center, as well as the electrical service. These are for lighting at the roundabouts, the permanent lighting. That's ongoing this week and will continue into next week. So let's look at a couple of pictures, and what you see here is obviously the bridge, but these are the overhangs. Our deck actually sticks out further than the steel girders. You probably see that on a lot of bridges, and this is what allows them to do that. So they put these overhangs in, they put their deck pans in to stay in place forms, and then they can pour their concrete on top of the bridge. But you can see there's quite a few of them on both sides. I think now they've gotten all the way down on both sides of the bridge, so they're ready to move on to the next step. And you can see here, this is abutment A. This was actually when the QA and QC folks were out there looking at the steel before they allowed them to put the rest of their formwork up and pour that back wall. So that back wall is what, when we were out there last time, and you could see the ends of the bridge girders, that's what protects the ends of the bridge girders, is that back wall. Okay, next slide. This is pond 7, so this was taken earlier in the week. This pond has since been completed. And here you can see the riser structure with the cage on top, so we don't have any trash going down into the streams. They had this pond constructed last time we were out there, but they still had to come in and put in the riser and the outlet pipe and build the slope protection on that. So that's kind of a good look at the progress of what they've been doing this week in building those ponds that are really important. Closures, really no closures. May have a periodic flagging operation if they're bringing equipment or materials into the location on Ryan Mills Road underneath the bridge, but we really haven't had any flagging operations since the cranes left about a week and a half ago. So over the next 2 weeks, much of the same. Continuing the erosion control maintenance, box out grading, fine grading, placing the stone for the sub base. We talked about that during our tour. We're within the roadway, going ahead, putting that stone down, compacting it so we build the base for the asphalt. Form liners. So we have the same patterns on the Berkmar Bridge as we have on Rio. So they have to put those form liners up there to get that pattern on all the barrier walls and parapet walls. Abutment A, diaphragms and back wall pour. Abutment B, MSC panel installation continues. Seating again every week, on Thursdays every week. And ponds 7 and 8 drainage structures. They've gotten ahead on these because of the importance of the erosion control, but just finishing those up, putting the finishing touches in on them. Right now they carry water, but there's a few little things that need to be done. And begin the stay-in-place form installation on the bridge itself to allow them to pour the deck. And the next slide, same flagging operation along Ryan Mills Road in the event it's necessary. So any questions on Berkmar Extended? Okay. Al, you want to take care of Hillsdale for us?
Sure. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
As long as you stay handy for the safety.
Sure. Today was a monthly progress meeting on Hillsdale. Things are going pretty well on that. Our construction manager was in attendance. I haven't spoken with him before I had come over here, but work this week. They're continuing to do storm drain work in and around the area of Seminole Square Shopping Center. Complete the sanitary main at abutment A, which is on the north side of the creek. They're working on abutment A bridge grading. This is near the Pepsi plant, and stormwater basin excavation on the north side of Greenbrier Drive. No significant lane closures this week. I would note that they did reduce the speed limit along Hillsdale Drive for the work zone, and that's going to be a permanent speed reduction through that area from about Branchland south. Here's a photo looking to the south from behind the old shopping center where the building was taken down. So you can see behind us will be the bridge, and this is the new Homewood Suites is off in the distance there, I believe.
Yeah, it's here.
And so you can see it's all clear now. They're working on storm and other work there. The next picture will be facing 180 degrees from that one. The Pepsi facility is there prominently, and the stream is down here on the bottom. So they're working over there with some of the embankment. The post office is on the left in this picture. There's a sanitary manhole there on the left side, and with the cone sticking up, and on the right is a drainage structure and outfall. So this will be where the bridge spans to the north. The next 2 weeks, Dominion Power is scheduled next weekend for this weekend for shutdown. And now they coordinate with all the neighbors and the businesses in the area to let them know we're going to have a temporary shutdown of power ahead of time so that folks can be ready for that. Now I'm hoping this hurricane isn't going to impact South Carolina, Georgia too much where these crews might be diverted, but they're on track to do that work this weekend. Comcast can come in and begin their splicing once Dominion Power is complete. Various drainage structure installations, you saw one in the photo there near the Pepsi plant. Pile installations will begin here shortly on that north abutment, and stormwater basin excavation continues on the north side of Greenbrier. No anticipated lane closures upcoming. Any questions on Hillsdale?
Progress.
Moving along, looks good.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Jeanette Janicek will come to the next meeting.
Thanks.
Or Janacek.
Pardon me?
Or Janacek.
Janicek, yes.
Okay, a while back, Kristen, I think you asked about safety records, and we were going to show this at the last meeting, but we ended up having this forward, so we figured we'd wait till today. There hasn't been any changes to this, and this lists all of the OSHA recordable accidents that have occurred on the project from day one. So we have had 8 different recordable incidents. I took the employee names and supervisor names off because I didn't think it was really, it didn't benefit this conversation. This is all public information. You can get it from OSHA's website. But it tells you kind of who the person was, what they do. They're a laborer, they're a equipment operator, whatever they are. So we have some foremen here, skilled laborer, boom truck operator, a couple more laborers, and a carpenter. And some of the issues that we've had, we've talked about this before, we've had minor issues here. We've had minor incidents where everybody's been able to go home, had 0 lost time rate, so that's very good as well. The first one was a torn right forearm supinator, if anybody knows what that is, any doctors in the house, while moving a message board. So we had the tow behind message boards, and he went to pick it up off the hitch, and it just happened to tear a muscle on his arm. These things happen. It's actually the one that I believe spirals around your arm and connects to your elbow. So that was an unfortunate thing. We did have, actually this was back in December of 2015, there was an altercation between 2 employees. One of them fell, hit his head, did have to go to the hospital. The reason this is not a lost time incident is because it was an altercation, both of the people involved in the altercation were immediately fired.
So by the time they were at the hospital, they didn't work anymore.
They didn't know there was kind of one punch time. Both of them were fired. It's not, lane foreman, they don't put up with that. So they didn't come to us and ask us our opinion on it at all. They just did it, and I think they did the right thing. So we had one person, a foreman, who slipped on a slope and sprained his ankle while walking up the slope. We have another one who slipped on what's called a fin board. These are boards that they use for their slope protection, so you don't have a trench fall in, and they do get very slippery when they're wet. And he just happened to step on one when it was wet, and he slipped and fell on his knee and hurt his knee a little bit. We have a person, a boom truck operator, that was trying to move one of the H piles. This was in April, so they were still moving some piles and installing some piles in preparation for the crossover closure, and he pinched his finger between 2 piles. One of them moved over on him, he caught his finger in there. Still has his finger. So. Another laborer that was struck in the neck by a 4x4x1 board that fell off of the walkway that they had by the bridge, and it kind of caught him on the back and neck. He ended up being fine, which is very good. These 2 right here were the only ones that we had during the Rio crossover closure, and one of those was Berkmar. So that one right there with that board falling is the only recordable incident they had in that period of time from when they closed the crossover until they opened it back up. And quite honestly, with the amount of work and in such a confined space and the number of people and equipment, I think that's pretty good. It'd be better if it was 0, but I think that's pretty good. So on Burkmar, on 6/24/16, we had a gentleman who pulled a muscle while carrying some tools up a slope. I don't know if it was a bucket of tools or sledgehammers or whatever it was, just pulled a muscle. Can happen to all of us, definitely. 29 winding, we had a laborer that pinched a finger between a jackhammer and the shoring. So this was where they were trying to expose for a pipe crossing underneath of a water line. And it's a very tight space, and he got his hand down where it shouldn't have been, and the jackhammer kind of raised up and pinched his finger between that and the shoring above it. So they have since changed their policy on how they handle jackhammers in those trenches. So their incident rate here is 4.34. They've had 367,700 man hours. That was as of August 31st. They would like this incident rate to be lower, but 0 lost time accidents and a 0 lost time rate is very good. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
You say that's through August 31st?
Yes.
What's the start period for that?
That was the beginning of the project.
Which was?
9/15.
It was May, what was the date? May of 2015. Yes. Yeah. It was 368,700 man hours.
Do the math, Brad.
Yeah.
Leave that up just a minute.
That's the start of the
This
project.
was I'm really glad you asked this question and appreciate Dave pulling this together and sharing it with us, because what it demonstrates, this isn't just something that Dave put together just for this meeting. This is a log that's kept, and it's not a guy broke his arm or had his foot cut off. I mean, this is a record of what, well, we never use the term minor issue in terms of safety, but it demonstrates how seriously safety is taken on a project. And I can imagine, of all the meetings you have, everyone begins with some tip about safety, whatever it might be. And sometimes it sounds a little obvious to others, but
Putting your hand down
who goes
where
to
the
work?
jackhammer is.
Who goes to work comes home,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal. So thanks for going over that with everybody, Dave. I mean, I know what the goal is, but that's good work. That shows a lot of effort on everybody's part, and the fact that you take things seriously. You want to go out on the job and fight. Well, maybe go home and do that, because you're not going to do it here.
Another way to look at this 368,000 hours is just, the reason I asked is you do the math, that's 770 hours, assuming they're working around the clock a day. I mean, 770 hours a day.
A lot of people.
A lot of people and a lot
A lot
of
of people. And, for those of you that were driving around and maybe looked, particularly during that shutdown period,
They were rushing. I mean, the whole idea of haste makes waste. I think that there's always that balance that you're trying to go as fast as possible without messing up.
yeah.
It looks like they stayed on the right side of the
Yeah,
line.
well, when they took us through many times that we met with them and said, tell us how you're going to do this
Yeah.
between May and September. A huge part of that planning was all prefaced by safety.
Sure.
How are we going to keep people safe? We know how much equipment we need to bring in. We know how many people we need to bring in. How are we going to keep them safe? And remember, they told us, hey, you promised you wouldn't bring anybody in here if we ask you not to. We're asking you not to bring the panel in here. And that was all about safety, not because they were worried about us seeing something or talking to us or getting in their way or slowing them up. It was, we were going to be in there at a time when a lot of activities were going on that just created opportunities for mishaps. And the best way to not have that happen is to avoid the situation. So thanks again, Dave. And speaking of safety, Well, speaking of landscaping, speaking of landscaping, I wanted to give you a little briefing, just real quick on the landscaping contract at 29,250. We talked a bit once about, and did go back to the city to see whether or not they wanted to trade out the guardrail on Route 29 for maybe some other type of less shiny guardrail. And what the city staff came back with and said, you know, what we would, if you got some extra money that you're willing to spend, what we'd really like to do is repair some guardrail and put in some enhanced landscaping. The city had a plan that they gave to VDOT, and we said that was going to happen after we finished Rio and Best Buy. So that advertisement is out on the street. Bids are open October the 20th. Take a couple of days to evaluate the bids and make sure there's a responsive and responsible low bid. And depending on whether there is or is not a 10-day bid protest period, either sometime the week of the 24th or sometime the week of November the 7th, would expect to award that contract, and then would expect to install, would install the landscaping sometime in the spring of 2017. There is, but I don't have it. There was a plan.
For next time, because
that we will. There was a landscaping. There's a landscaping plan,
yeah.
And I will. I did have it, but I'm pretty sure I don't anymore, Dave. Like most things,
Somebody has
keep it
it.
around too long. Oh, we'll have it. I'm sure there's something in
in the bids.
Oh, yeah.
There was, yeah. We'll definitely do that on, don't let me forget that, Debbie. Thank you. And speaking of safety, we told you we'd keep you updated on these accident reports as the reports are posted. Joel's been staying on top of that for us. And Joel, why don't you just take us through this a bit?
Well, what we're trying to focus on here is the time where the crossover was closed. So it says May to June 2015. I couldn't get July data yet, so it's not available. So I couldn't get to July 18th. However, the May date actually starts on May 23rd. So I ran the reports from May 23rd through the end of June. So what we saw is 9 crashes in 2015 when we didn't have a restriction with 3 injuries. And while we did have the closure of the crossover, we had 16 crashes, 2 injuries. And on the next slide, you'll see a map, and hopefully you can see the colors of the dots there. Those are actually, that's the 2015 crashes. The green dots are actually rear-end collisions. The red dot you see down there, farther towards the bottom, is a side swipe, and the blue dots would be.
Joel, you might want to come and point to because I'm not going to be able to help you on the colors of the dots.
So you have a blue dot here, and those are side swipes. And what you'll notice about the blue dots is they tend to happen
And where was the
they're not
green?
side swipes. The red is a side swipe. The blue dots are angle collisions, which is what you typically see at intersections. So you'll see the blue dots usually where there's an entrance. And then the green dots are rear-end collisions, which is the majority of them. The next slide is the same time period that occurred in 2016. It's interesting. Once again, you see the blue dots, which are the angle collisions happening, about the same number. What we saw during the construction period so far, and we'll see if this trend continues, is you see more red dots. Actually, you see 6. You don't see 6 on there because I think there's a couple overlapping here. There might be 2. There might be actually 3 red dots there. So we had more side swipes. And it kind of makes sense because the side swipes appear to be, for the most part, where you have some narrowing going on, and also up there at the merge area. So everything else was about consistent. So out of those 16, it really looks like the side swipes went up. You see the injuries, actually, we had 3 in 2015 and 2 in 2016. Pretty similar. Side swipes, an increase in side swipe crashes, really mostly property damage. You don't see a lot of, you don't necessarily see a lot of injuries.
Do you know from the accident reports whether or not these particular accidents or any of them involve speeding through the construction zone?
I didn't look at that. I can look at that. What I would like to do is when the July data is available, to go ahead and get that whole construction.
And get us a summary of it.
So
Okay.
I'll review those a little bit
Okay.
more. Sometimes
Okay.
Sometimes it does, in general, sometimes accident reports do say it's speeding. A lot of times, it doesn't indicate whether they're speeding, which usually means that they just couldn't tell if they were speeding.
When a lot of these accidents occurred, and I know because I spent a great deal of time out there and saw some of these occurring, there were a couple of things going on. Usually they were occurring in the peak hour when there was a lot of congestion, and there was a lot of people trying to look at the construction, not paying attention to the road, and running into the vehicle in front of them. And generally, they were low-speed rear-end collisions. And then some people who may have been looking at construction and drifted out of their lane. So that, I think,
Maybe the
is
side
where we're seeing
swipes.
some of the side swipes.
Yeah. It's also interesting that on the previous slide, you don't have the concentration right at the intersection, which might have something to do with people staring over the bridge.
Joel, then when you get the July data, you'll be able to put a good little picture of the closure period together for
I'll
us?
have from May 23rd to July 18th only.
Okay.
Another thing about the injury crashes is basically, as far as these reports go, anytime a person is transported to, to a medical facility for some sort of treatment, it really doesn't, I don't know if they're severe injuries or not.
There's one dot that's not red or blue or green, that's kind of pinkish purple on ours, or pink on ours and purple on yours, just above the intersection at Friday.
This?
Yes.
That's probably a blue
Oh,
and a red together.
that is a purple dot. Yes, that's a run off the road. Fixed object off-road collision. That's the only one that happened in either one of these periods of
All
time.
right. So they hit something.
They ran off the road and hit something. I don't know what. Yeah. Thanks for catching that. But yeah, it's interesting. We see more concentration here. We don't see a whole lot going on down here. You see more rear ends up at where the congestion is occurring.
I'm not getting the side swipes at Garden Boulevard, which I'd be interested to see if we see those after.
Well, we can run them
Changes
after.
open,
Yeah,
yeah.
this data usually is a couple months behind. I might have July data available as of the next.
So maybe either October 20th or the November 3rd, I think it is,
Yeah.
meeting.
I'll check
and they
that
have
and see if-
that period. And then we will continue to look at this post July as well. Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The biggest change on our budget, last meeting was our budget update, second meeting of the month, but since we didn't do it, I thought we'd go ahead and do it for this one. A big number in approved change orders, and I think that's the bonus, or the incentive, I should say. The exposure of $1,300 is the additional incentive that's available as part of the design build package if all projects
Are completed.
are completed as scheduled,
There's
right?
a very similar, but
Yeah.
much more simplistic schedule.
Schedule.
for the overall completion.
But that would include the December 2nd completion at Rio, as well as the October
Yeah, it's
schedule
really-
for the design build
So
project.
everything's done on time,
Yes, early.
early.
It's done on time, it's 0. So
Yeah,
Got it.
right.
Every day earlier, it's a little more.
So we'll carry that out there, and because the approved change order is more than the amount invoiced, it's a little increase in the remaining contract value and a little bump in the anticipated completion, budget at completion. No substantive changes on anything else from the August report. So everything's still nicely in line with the total Route 29 Solutions budget for these construction projects in terms of what was programmed against where we expect things to wind up. And one thing I will say is, based on involvement in other projects in Virginia, the area is really seeing a lot of improvement for, I mean, not that that's not a substantial investment. $160 million is a lot of money, but I really think VDOT and the city are doing a great job of delivering a lot of improvements for that amount of money. I'll tell you what, in an urban area, you can drive a truck across the road and spend $150 million pretty darn easily. I mean, it's just the way it is, and that's an impressive summary of work, I think, for a good value for that money, and we want to make sure it stays that way. Any questions on the budget? Okay. On the single timing adjustments, Diantha, along with some others, had commented about the Rio westbound to Route 29 southbound, and I think these are the only single timing adjustments that have been made since the last meeting.
No, gotta help.
Well, some others?
Yeah.
Okay.
Greg gave me an update like it. Yes.
Oh, okay. Have at it.
Okay.
Have at it.
I have my notes here, so I have to.
Go through these and.
Okay, so these are specific to the, well, I thought you were gonna cover these, so I didn't really.
Well, you did it. You got them right there.
All right, so the left turn at Rio westbound to 29 southbound, we added, we have three time of day phases here, and they added 4 seconds to the AM peak time. The midday or the lunchtime hour is unchanged in 2 seconds in the afternoon peak time. And I think what we talked about yesterday at the board meeting was that 2 to 4 seconds or 5 seconds doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it does make a pretty big difference in getting that traffic through there. So hopefully we'll see some improvements. Those were just, I believe those were just made this week, pretty quickly.
Those were made very.
He just looked at it and said, I'll
since
find
the
some
weekend.
time.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
good. Other timings that we've changed since the last meeting, on September 21st, we made changes at the left turn lane. We've been looking at the Woodbrook signal for a long time and getting a lot of comments about the left turn lanes at Woodbrook. And what they've been able to do out of Woodbrook is they coordinated the timing at the Route 29 and Woodbrook intersection with the signal at the Lowe's entrance right there. Because everybody's trying to take a left on Woodbrook, they get in the leftmost lane, they try and make a left into the Kroger or Giant, Riot Hills there. So what they've done is they've coordinated that, and in doing so, they're able to get that traffic to move a little bit better through both of those signals. After they coordinated those two signals, they found out that if you're going at the Lowe's entrance there, if you're going eastbound at the Lowe's entrance, they were able to make the left turn to go north into Lowe's. They're able to make that a permissive only phase, where a protected is where you get a left turn green arrow, and a permissive is where you get the left turn yield to green. When you make that movement, that's a lower volume movement, so you make that a permissive only and take away the protected phase, where you're able to give more green time to the traffic coming from Route 29 to take a left into the shopping center. So hopefully that made a difference. That was made on September 21st.
So that was Wednesday 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm not sure if you've noticed a difference there or not.
Okay.
Hopefully it's getting better. Grant seemed to think it was getting much better. And we continue to look at making that what we talked about at the last meeting that we were here. We're still modeling making that an unsplit phasing of that signal to see if we can make more improvements. But right now those two are coordinated. On October 3rd, we updated the coordination timings at Rio from Berkmar to Albemarle Square. And in doing so, they were able to add that 2 to 5 seconds that we're talking about right here. So with this, he coordinated the whole, well, I guess that's what, 3 signals through there?
Yeah.
And get them to work better together. And this week, we're expecting RK&K to do some driving, corridor drive-throughs to see what the effects are of the latest corridor update.
RK&K is the designer to the Lane Corman design building.
Yeah, they went out and observed the corridor Tuesday and yesterday, so they'll generate a report of recommendations, provide that to us for changes to improve the corridor flow.
Yeah, so the last corridor improvement we made was August 19th through the 22nd, which I think we discussed at the last meeting, I believe.
Okay.
And then, so after this week, we might see some further changes to get those green bands working better.
The point here is one, keep sending us any observations, personal observations matter. So if you have them, send them, or if you hear about them from others, make sure we know about it. But as you can hear from Joel and the folks at the Northwest Region office have been staying close with this in terms of making these fine improvements. At some point, that dog lays down and stops, because you can only make so many tweaks before you go from making it better to making something worse. And what Joel said, I would echo. Sometimes 2 seconds, 5 seconds, big deal. Well, it is a big deal in terms of clearing out a turn or clearing out a queue. So Joel, thanks for staying on this with Grant. Grant, thank you wherever you are. Well, we know where you are, so thank you. But any questions here? And Diantha, thanks for sharing your observation when you added there. Okay. I added this to new business. It's really just a reminder of something we said we would do several meetings ago. We are coming up to the period of collecting these traffic counts. And remember, we said, yeah, these are important to get, and we want to get them, and we're interested in what they say, but let's don't presume they're the end-all, be-all, because we still have a lot of work going on. But the schedule is here next week to collect information through counts on the main line of 29, and then turning movements at the signals at Rio and 29. So that's the local lanes in Rio, at Woodbrook and 29, and at Fashion Square and 29. And Nathan, who you met before, VDOT traffic also has a backup date scheduled in there as well, if weather interferes with taking these counts next week.
Will there be a pre-construction baseline number for each of those as well?
We have those from, we had the pre-construction
Interesting to
baseline.
have next to it.
Yeah, we'll have that next to it, and you were fortunate to not be here through what seems like several years of discussion on traffic numbers. But no, yeah, we've got baselines. We'll be able to look at what we thought might happen. There, we'll just have to be careful and not color that too much, because we have a baseline and we have projections with everything finished, and we're not there. But I'm very interested to see how these look against those baselines. And I think most of this is going to be in-house. Your folks are collecting. So really appreciate Nathan pulling all this together. Whether we'll have results or not for the meeting on the 20th, I would not count on that. If they're just going to finish up the work on the 13th, even if that works. So it might be the November meeting before we sneak it back in here. I didn't have that on the agenda, so I wanted to cover it and just plop it down on new business. But any other new business from Chip? Morgan.
This might be more old business, but I'd be interested in an update on the pedestrian signal timing issues at Rio, when there is one.
Yes, you can. I share your interest, and I'm sure this gentleman to your right does as well. But definitely. Mark? Kristen?
Just the landscaping schematics or pictures or something. Also, I just personally, and I noticed Brad stood up and went over too, coffee is lovely.
Yeah, I noticed. I'm not. We fell down on our job, and I don't even know why.
I never actually get to take a nap at 3, but somehow in my body, it's when I want to sleep or have a cup of coffee. But So it's just nice when it's here, no big deal. But also just wanted to mention, and Chip has probably mentioned it to you, that the MPO, inspired by the system that you all have here with the cameras and everything, is now doing our meetings as well. So thank you for leading the way on that.
Well, I mean,
Chips
you're
is
welcome.
higher quality. I should say.
Well,
Let me tell you, I watched, Debbie and I tuned in to part of that meeting, and I was impressed with
yeah,
the
it's got
quality.
the split screen and everything.
Yeah, and it was a real sharp quality. Ours are a little on the fuzzy side.
Let us know, we can get you a proposal.
Yours was, I mean, it was
Okay.
really,
Okay.
it was really clear. It was very
We were really
clear.
pleased,
Yeah, and you had somebody kind of maneuvering around. I caught Joel there for a while.
we put that together that morning, put it on our Facebook page, and had 5 people.
Yeah, well, I think we were looking on the same screens.
No, Brad.
Oh, Brad,
Yeah.
yeah, so good job, good job.
There you go. It's 2 out of 5. That's
Yeah.
not-
That's right, they're in this
not-
room.
Yeah, it is good to see that spreading. It's a good thing to do for the public. You know, I think we said before that after we did our first one here, the communication folks back in Richmond said, well,
Do it all.
we got to do it for the CTV, and kind of pulled something together pretty quickly that they do routinely now. So it's a good thing. Thank you. Brad, any
No.
wrap up for new business? All right, I think we are good until October 20th, and hopefully the weather won't be too bad, and it'll either back at our home or here. So
Will not be here for that.
okay, all right.
I'm assuming Brad.
Oh, yeah, the Governor's Transportation Conference, that's right. I had not thought about that. Morgan, are you going to that, or will you be here, or?
What about you?
I'm not going. I mean, whether I have this or not, I've got other things other work that's going to keep me from going.
It's going to be a mighty slim group then. 'Cause
Yeah, I know, I will, oh, you won't be here
I'll be
either.
in Chicago.
What?
And most of the technical team will be at the
It's not a vacation, it's
Well, should we make a collective decision?
Given that your technical team is going to be up there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to roll over. Oh, that's right, and you're not here. Debbie, you and I can make a lot of decisions.
just make decisions.
Well, should we just, we should just
Do November.
agree to the obvious and roll over.
We'd already
to-
talked about doing monthly anyway, so just
To
do it a little
November.
sooner.
Well, let's don't decide to start monthly yet, because
I
I
know.
want to keep the heat on December
Okay.
and RIO GSI. But we will cancel our October 20th meeting and roll to November the 3rd, I think it is. I don't know why I had that date stuck in my head, but I think that's it. I'll confirm that in a note as well. I'm glad I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, everyone.
Each of us
Okay,
our own.
thank you. Thank you very much. All right, stay safe, be careful. Thank you very much.